Dude, you are getting well. Dude, welcome, my friendly dudes from all walks of life. Welcome today. Wherever you are, I want to say you're in the right place because this conversation does not happen very often. We're having a behind the scenes, real talk with men about menopause, what you can what you can learn, what you should know, what to avoid, and also how this might affect your relationship and your business. So we're here. I'm excited for this guest today. Really special person. We've never had anyone talking about this topic today, and I'm just thrilled that a man is finally bringing this forward in his life to say, hey, I didn't have it all figured out, and let's try to work together and do some really beautiful stuff in the world. So he's not only making an impact personally, he's also making an impact professionally. Dan Simons is my guest today, and Dan is the co-owner of Founding Farmers Restaurant Group. We love farmers here. And he's a leading advocate for mission-driven business. He champions people-first culture and responsible industry standards while driving profitability. I mean, what can you not love about that? And that he's willing to talk about menopause. Here he is, Dan Simons. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Dude, it is such a pleasure. So how did you, well, first of all, tell us who Founding Farmers is, because I love farming. I eat from the land. I'd love to know about that.
So I'm a restaurateur. I have one business partner, Michael Vikurovich. He's also a restaurateur. We've been together as business partners for a long time. And we have another partner, the North Dakota Farmers Union. And we joined forces with them. We're restaurateurs, they're farmers, and we put together this mission to build a company to advocate for American family farmers, buy American family farmed product, cook from scratch, and really bring this through the eyes of the farmer ethos into how to run a company. And so we're capitalists. It's a for-profit venture, but it's really about doing capitalism with a conscience. And so we've grown now to, it's north of $100 million a year in revenue and 1,600 employees, restaurants, catering company. We own our own distillery. We have our own bakery. We've got our own 18-wheeler that runs product from the farmers. And that's where the enterprise is today.
Wow. Congratulations. And we can't do that without taking care of ourselves. You mentioned before that you really work with a team. One of the things I'm taking on this year is more partnerships, more team. And one of my coaches and I have an agreement. We're not doing anything alone this year. And I heard you say that just at the beginning. And I wonder if you'd speak to, as a man in American society, who most of us are trained to do things alone, have there been a time when you were trying to build your business alone? And what was the difference of that versus now that you're using a team?
So I really don't like being alone. I never have, I'm the youngest of four, great relationship with my older sisters and my older brother. I love, spending time with my family. I grew up north of Boston. So, I'm a Boston, New England guy, groups of friends, had the same friends forever. So when I started doing business and having entrepreneurial ideas, I really knew from the beginning, I didn't want to do it alone. And from the sports I played growing up, even though I was a wrestler, people thought it was an independent sport. What drove me was the team and the obligation to my teammates. So I just bring that into my business life. And for me, winning alone is not winning at all. I want to do it together. And I found in business that, 1 + 1 is 3. You just create way more value. Not for everybody, for myself. There's way more value to be created when we do it, together, which means then we got to lift each other up.
I think that's a brilliant lesson for anyone who's starting a business today. I mean, my Instagram feed says like teenagers are building their own businesses by themselves doing this, I don't know how much of that's true, but I think being told that we can do anything by ourselves and just go do it by yourself versus the what you're missing out of being connected to a team. And one of the teams you spoke about that really spoke to me too was your relationship and your personal, your romantic relationship, and how your relationship was affected the moment a new challenge, and a new life cycle entered the picture, called menopause. And I wonder, not something we get to talk about with men every day, and how maybe it not only it affected not just the one person, but the whole team. How did it really affect your life, and how did you even start talking about this? You know, doing what you do. How did this come into your narrative?
The seeds were planted for me with this young, I think. My mom's a doctor, and so she's 88 now, still alive, doing great. But I saw her as a physician, and she was a women's specialist, and she we would have conversations just around the dinner table. Both my parents were doctors, actually. And so that sort of planted seeds with me. Like, we talked about it all at the dinner table. And so everything, men's health, women's health, these were just normal, obvious things to talk about the way I was raised. The way that manifested for me in my business life was people talk about how to have tough conversations or taboo topics. And I just always thought, well, there doesn't actually have to be any tough conversations. And like, a taboo is only if you decide there is. So I hadn't thought about menopause as a business person much since what I had learned when I was a kid. And then I'm 55 now. About 8 years ago, my wife, Susie, we've been married, we got married in 2001. She started having, symptoms of perimenopause, which is the phase leading up to menopause. And I saw her struggle, and we talked about it, and it affects everything: mood, appearance, it's your hormones. So the whole human body is affected. And what I learned from her was, wow, I have no idea what you're going through. And what I saw from her was she didn't know either. And then she talked to her doctors, and they didn't know. So that was the beginning of the journey that I saw at home. And I pretty quickly thought, wow, holy shit. This is why so many people in their late 40s and 50s get divorced. Like, you lose the physical intimacy. It's a physical health topic. It's a mental health topic. It affects spouses and children. By the way, not for 100% of people, but about 80% of women, when they go through perimenopause and menopause, will experience some relevant symptoms. So that personal journey that I was sort of on with Susie and learning, it just clicked for me. Like, wait, if 50% of my employees are female and 100% of them will at some point go through menopause, and 80% of them will have some symptoms that could affect how they sleep or how they feel or what happens in their relationship, then I have to be a total fool as a business leader. Like, just look at the math, right? Basically 100% of 50% of my team could be affected by this one day. And so's the other 50%. Because if you have a mom, you have a daughter, you have a spouse, you have a sister, then you're adjacent to it. So I just put that together, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is so obvious. We all need to talk about it. We all need to learn about it.
Wow, you said it right there. And it's really fascinating that you're bringing this into business too. I hadn't even thought about it on that side. And it almost feels like you could be running for president right now, speaking of what's possible in the work culture and the workplace. Like, my wife, I'm sure as soon as she hears this, will be like, thank you, hello, because we have conversations all the time about even making space for pregnancy, let alone grief and trauma. I talk a lot about how to make space for grief in businesses, because we don't make space for that often anywhere in our lives, but let alone professionally. You're expected to show up and perform when you're having life altering experiences or traumas or just changes. And so if 100% of the women in our life are going to go through this, I really love that you're listening for that as a business owner, and that over 50% of your team would be affected. You mentioned some kind of relevant, some of the relevant side effects or the things they may experience as a result. And I wonder if there are some things that you've noticed from your perspective or would want to tell yourself or tell our listeners, you know, if you could have learned this or known this 5, 10 years ago, man, here's what I tell myself now. Is there anything you wish you knew that you'd want to tell yourself back then?
I wish I understood when I was 30 that I could participate proactively in the women's health and wellness of the women in my lives. So I could say things like, hey, it's a great idea to get your blood work done and establish your baseline levels and your hormone levels because I'm a guy, you're a woman, both of us are going to face hormonal changes. And if we understand our baseline, and hey, let's like read this list of potential symptoms that we could have. Because, guys go through hormonal changes. Women, obviously, I think there's more likely to be more symptoms with their hormonal changes. But that's what I would have told myself years ago, that this is definitely coming for all the women in my life at some point. And there's stuff we can do to educate ourselves ahead of time. And, I think the marital vows should say, like, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health, like through menopause and beyond. And by the way, like, whatever, add in through erectile dysfunction and beyond. Like,
Yeah.
it's important to say that this is not a deficiency of women at all. This is just part of the human inevitable changes that humans go through. So I would have educated myself earlier, prior, and it's in any aspect of business. Be proactive, know the landscape, prepare for the optionality of what might arrive, and then you just do better.
Well, the language of business is often risk, right? And mitigating risk. So if you're looking at what to look out for, you're much more likely to be able to show up for it. Dan, what was the moment you realized menopause wasn't just something your partner was going through, but something that actually deeply affected your relationship and, maybe required you to learn and show up differently?
So what I was going through at home inspired me to talk about it at work. And I had the opportunity, while I spend most of my time with my restaurant team and running our company, I do find myself inevitably on stages talking about leadership or entrepreneurship and employee wellness. And I referenced menopause just briefly in a mental health talk that I was giving. And I came off the stage, and a woman came up to me as I came off the stage with tears in her eyes. And she said to me, I've never heard a man say the word menopause out loud. I've never heard a man or a woman say the word menopause at work. And she said, I have been having such an incredibly hard time for the past 7 years. And she said, to hear you stand up there and say this was so affirming for me. Thank you. And she just gave me a hug. I gave her a hug. We hugged.
Mm.
And it just struck me like, wow, I can make a difference. And so that has been, I can picture her face and I can still feel how she felt. And, Ben, I know my lane. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a woman. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a psychologist. I'm none of those things. I'm just a guy in business and I'm just a guy in a marriage. So what is my lane? Well, I can talk about mental and physical health of employees and helping people be the best version of themselves, because that's how we generate the most profit and run the most successful companies. So, I stay in my lane with the topic, but it's able to, I think, resonate and help a lot of people inside my company and, in the business world at large.
Yeah, and just speaking it forward. I mean, that's phenomenal. If half your employees feel more accepted and seen just because you're talking about, what we should all could be talking about, right? Which is just normalcy and what our bodies are going through. And what are some of the most common mistakes you think men, or we could also answer business partners, make when their partners are going through, or someone in their life is going through perimenopause or menopause, and what are some maybe simple but powerful things they could do instead?
I think the most common mistakes are to ignore the topic, to not be educated on the topic, or to fall into this trap that, oh, menopause is just, when women can't have babies anymore. Then there is the stigma and the just sort of ridiculous and offensive stereotype of like, well, women aren't valuable after menopause. Um, folks who think that, they're not really my audience, nor are they around me or near me. So I think the common mistakes I see is thinking it's either not a big deal or you just don't know about it, or it's, oh yeah, I know about menopause, like women get hot flashes. And to think that uh menopause equals hot flashes is just, it's just really narrow and myopic. This is like, saying, I don't know, cancer patients are tired, or, athletes are dumb. Like any of these stereotypes, they just reflect an ignorance. And this is the humans are complicated. And those I think are the lessons. And I guess the other lesson, or the other mistake that I see, is to say, this isn't appropriate to talk about. We shouldn't talk about it. We shouldn't talk about it at work. This is private. And I challenge that mistake. And I say, well, is productivity at work a work topic? And people say, yes. Is focus and attention a work topic? People say, yes. Is absenteeism or error rates a work topic? Yes. Okay. Well, if I could walk you through the experience of maybe what is affecting some women at some point, because again, it's not a blanket thing, um, that can lead to distraction, brain fog, low self-esteem, anxiety, unhappiness with self, like a iciness in their relationship at home. Let's be serious. All that stuff affects you at work. And so it's just when people want to say it's not a work topic, or it's like it's not a guy's topic. My answer is, do you want to maximize profit? And that answer is usually yes. And then it's like, do idiots maximize profit? No, probably not. Super. Then I'm just like looking in the mirror and I'm like, I'm just going to educate myself here. So again, no judgment for me on anyone else, but those are some of the mistakes I think that I originally made and that I still sometimes run into out there. And I just try to answer them with no judgment logic.
This is beautiful. I had another question which I think you've already answered, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Let's see. Well, no, this will apply. How's communication, from your perspective? How does communication need to shift during menopause? Let's say the workplace, because I think that's kind of where we're going right here. What have you learned about the importance of listening, empathy, and maybe even intimacy through this process?
I would say culturally in the workplace that this starts well before just the topic of menopause. My belief is culturally at work, if we actually look our people in the eye and ask them how they are, and then we pause, like actual silence, pause, like, how are you? And you give people a chance to respond. When that's part of a culture in a workplace, what I find is people actually tell you how they are, and sometimes, inevitably, the answer is not so great. Oh man, like what's up? Tell me what's going on. How are you? And the answer is anything from my grandma's sick to my dog got hit by a car to, man, I don't know. I've just felt off lately. And so I'm not focused on specifically menopause support for menopause. Menopause is just one of a list of anything that affects people. So in the workplace, building a culture that is people centric. And some of these buzzwords, like people talk about, a people first culture. What does that mean? This is why I talk about look people in the eye, ask them how they are. And if people aren't telling you when they're not good, then they're just hiding it from you. Like, who's good every single day? Like, Ben, are you good every single day?
Absolutely not.
Me neither.
I'm usually many things all at the same time.
Yeah, that's right. So I think making space for the humans and shattering this ridiculous myth that you should leave your problems at the door. Like, look, that's what I was told as a young guy coming up in the restaurant business. I was told, right? Like, leave your problems at the door, leave your problems at home. When you come here, it's just work. I understand the mantra. I'm all for like lock in, focus, and do the thing. But in reality, if you had a torn ACL and your boss was like, leave your knee at home, you would be like, well, that's ridiculous. I got to bring my torn ACL to work. So if someone's like, leave your anxiety at home or leave your depression at home,
or leave your menopause at home,
leave your menopause at home. Like, isn't it just illogical, as a leader to suggest what is fundamentally impossible? So that's how I come at it.
Thank you for this. I even asked my partner, like, how do you deal with having your menstrual cycle in these situations? When you're like a CEO, you're got to lead a meeting and suddenly, things change. It's like, we actually need to have space to have conversations for this. And men don't usually talk about menopause at all. I don't think anyone, really does. So I'm glad we're doing that. I'm sure there's women like, why aren't there women on this show? But specifically, one of the things I'm looking at is women have a lot of support for this. I mean, you can talk to each other. So one of the things I'm curious about is where would you say, or where did you go for support and education? Or where would you encourage other men to go for support or education so that they don't feel so isolated or in the dark when it comes to navigating this and supporting themselves and their partner?
There are some great books out there. So Dr. Jen Gunter, her book, I think it's the Menopause Manifesto. So one thing that anyone can do, male business leader, female business leader, is you can buy a book about menopause. You just keep it on your bookshelf, like in your office. It just like puts the topic visible somewhere. Obviously read the book, like absorb the information. And another nice place to start is watch the documentary called The M, as in menopause, The M Factor. It does a really nice job in an hour or so of framing the topic of menopause. And, Ben, you said that you acknowledge, like, you and I are just two dudes talking about this. And I think that's appropriate. I'm cautious. Sometimes I find myself on a panel or I'm speaking and I'm the only guy. I'm on the Health Action Alliance's Women's Health Board of Advisors. I'm the only male.
Awesome. And that they're open to having a male on the Women's Health Advisory. So that's exactly what I'm talking about here.
Yeah. And that is like, hey, this is our lane. We're not mansplaining. We're acknowledging what we don't know or can't experience, but there is no solo female work experience. There is no solo male work experience. It's not what the work environment is. So, I hosted a luncheon for men about menopause in the workplace. It was men only, because I found that, like, depending on the spaces, people keep quiet. Guys don't want to ask a question, maybe if there's women around, or women don't want to ask a question if there's guys around. So there's nothing wrong with a bit of segregation, create spaces to talk about stuff. Guys should be able to say, like, yo, what is this? Like, what happens? Like, hey, let's talk about it. So there's a lot of good information out there, but the M Factor and Dr. Jen Gunter as an author are two great sources.
I love this. And Dan, if you haven't considered it, I think there's got to be Men on Menopause, or maybe it's just Menopause, capital MEN, by Dan Simons, coming soon. An opportunity to talk about it because, hey, we all have our perspectives. And I think I read a book from a man's perspective about what his wife was going through during pregnancy to help prepare myself, because now he trains fathers on that, because he said, yeah, you need to show up for her, but there's some things you can do to step up, and you don't even know. You're like, I can't do anything, I just have to be there for it. No, there's things you can do and maybe should and could be doing. So I appreciate that, we're looking at what can we do, because we all know a woman. Hopefully we're working with women on a regular basis. And I'm curious, for you, from your perspective, why do you think it's so important for men to step up and understand menopause, and not just in homes, but in the workplace, community, perhaps society at large?
I believe that there is no guy out there that won't be affected by menopause in some way. And why be ignorant of something that can affect you directly and can affect someone you love? I mean, you just think about, again, your mom, your sister, your wife, your daughters, your female colleagues at work, your roommates, like whatever it is. And so um, it's like deciding to stay ignorant about someone else's religion. Like, religion's all around you. You don't have to believe in any of it, but a basic awareness of the religion and beliefs of others seems a reasonable thing. I also think it's a reasonable thing to understand the political views of people around you, right? This is just reasonable. And so there is no dude out there who can hide from the topic of menopause. Like, the ignorance will just lead to problems. And the great thing is the opposite. The awareness of it can lead to deepening of relationships, higher, whether it's like better in the relationship, better in the marriage. You're teaching your kids about this stuff, which will set their relationships up for more success. And it's all these same things in the workplace. So I hope I'm making a compelling case. And it's whatever the hurdle is, um, the look in the mirror of, yeah, man, it's just a taboo, or it's the stupid shit that I used to say, or it's like, oh, like I titled my blog about menopause, Men All Pause. And
Mm,
what I realized on my learning journey, it's like I didn't even know. Like, I just didn't know, even with what I learned from my mom and what I sort of knew technically, I
mhm.
had no idea. And so when you're scared to talk about a topic and you make up a case as to why you don't need to talk about it, oh, whatever, blah, blah, that's a moment to look in the mirror. Like, I got to question myself here. That is,
Mm.
if you've got a growth mindset, like if you want to grow yourself, if you want to support the people around you. And that's what drives me.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm lit up by that. Um, how did it impact your life before you learned to make space for it and listen to it? Like, what really happened? Like, why are we actually talking about this today?
I think it's the reason that Susie and I are still happily married, is that we are on the learning together about menopause. It's just a big change. Like, I happen to not suffer from erectile dysfunction, but that is a thing that affects a lot of men, which then affects a relationship. And maybe I will in the future. Like, I know a lot of guys that use the little blue pill and do whatever they need to do to solve that. And you can think like, wait, Dan, this is a business conversation? Yeah, it is. Because if I ended up getting divorced, I'm not going to be able to focus at work. Like, divorce is hard. It affects everyone. With Susie and I have 3 boys. And
Mm,
so
And so many of us are getting divorced now. And you mentioned preventing that. I just wonder, did you all ever, did that come up as a result of this? Did you ever have that time like, wow, if we don't deal with this, this is affecting our relationship? Has it had an
Yes.
impact in any place like that? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And because Susie and I, we're lucky, you know, we're good communicators and we communicate about this. And on the menopause topic, we communicated early. But let's just talk about sex in a relationship. And intimacy is an important part of a relationship, like the physical intimacy and the non-physical intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
So if one partner is going through something that can turn the desire for that to, you know, to zero, it was really important in my relationship. And, you know, Susie, my wife, she's like, Dan, you can say what, you know, you can talk about the hormone replacement therapy, you can talk about our relationship, you can talk about the marriage. So she's like an open book about it because she knows it helps everybody to hear about it.
Yeah.
But I would say that um, if she just kept me at arm's length, like the sort of like, I don't really physically want you near me. And if she didn't explain why, and I also didn't have the chance to say to her, hey, this is hard for me. You know, like I miss the physical intimacy when we went through some of those phases.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It would have just driven us apart.
Yeah.
I mean, Ben,
Yeah.
doesn't
Thank
it
you.
drive any relationship apart if there's something in the relationship that's an important part and then it goes to zero and you don't discuss it? Isn't that a separating of people? So that's
100%.
what
I
would have
mean,
happened.
even if you do discuss it, and everyone has, and because we each have a different experience as a result, you know, like I mentioned at the beginning with the miscarriage, that's something that brought my wife and I forward in a conversation more was whether we're talking about it or not, it had such a profound experience impact on us, but both so differently that we had to talk about some of it, but also some of it we need to process on our own and work out through our own stuff because it wasn't about the other person. It was about my experience. And so that's why I'm not asking you so much about her experience, but what was, you know, we're learning about yours and what you can gain from it. You know, as I'm going through someone who I know my partner will be there, if not already, and that it could look different for every single household too, like or every relationship. Like you could be the one experiencing that while your partner's libido is higher than ever. And guys are like, I don't understand. I'm not in the mood anymore. What happened? Well, statistically, you climaxed 10 years ago and she's still on her way up. So, like, you got to learn it. There's different sides to it. And I really appreciate you bringing this forward because if, like, yeah, we're not, we seem to understand pregnancy, like, oh, she needs to take a leave of absence. But the dads are also not sleeping and we're expecting them just to show up. You know, if anyone's going through, if someone's died in your life, you know, we expect just to show up, but are we actually making the space to deal with it? And I believe if we make more space in our businesses for this, that we actually can have much healthier people, much healthier businesses, and much healthier relationships and money all around, right? There's actually a workability that happens.
And that's my lane, which is this is a business topic. This is a workplace topic. And that I think helps break down the walls of like, well, we shouldn't talk about it. Then great, just realize it's a business topic. You're comfortable talking about business topics. And so it drives it in there. A company is just the result and the output of its people. That's all a company is, right? A company is not even a thing. A company is this like amalgamation of the humans that work there. And so when we talk about lifting up the performance of a company, we're talking about lifting up individual performance that then, you know, synthesize together as team performance. So again, it's pretty obvious from a mental health and a physical health standpoint. If I can make you feel like I can take a 20-pound backpack off of you and you could run faster, it's a work topic. So I know we've talked a lot about menopause. I think it's really just an example of one of lots of things that affects human performance as does it affect relationships, which also affects performance inside the workplace. And so for me, I just bring it all back. And that's why people are like, oh, wait, why are you talking about your upping your Zoloft dose? I'm like, well, let me tell you why I'll tell you about upping my Zoloft dose, because I'm performing better at work. So, my Zoloft dose is a work topic. Now, I don't think everybody has to share everything about themselves, and people can have their own privacy. But I like to challenge the assumption that when someone wants to share, or they would be better off if they felt some allyship and support, you want to create that at work as a leader. And this myth that the leader can't ever show themselves sweat, or the dad is supposed to be tough. Don't ever let your kids see you stressed. My three boys, they've seen me. They've seen me when our business is down. They've seen me when I'm scared that we're going broke. They know what it's like to be in a restaurant family of entrepreneurs. And I'm preparing my sons for real life. And real life it's hard out there. You got to feel what you feel, put a name on it, understand it, get support, and support those around you. For me, that's what being a tough guy is. Because, you can take your you could take your macho, all that, all the way, straight off the cliff. It's just not a long-term winning strategy to think you're Superman.
Amen. Well, you said it right there. Well, we've got just 1 minute left. I really love this conversation. I think it's been really valuable. I hope we'll help a lot of people. If you're listening, please don't forget to comment and share this with someone who could use it, and also subscribe so that this can reach more of the people who can use it. And Dan, where might we go to follow you, learn more about what you're up to in the world?
People can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram at Dan Simons Says. That's also my blog, dansimonsays.com. My restaurants are at foundingfarmers.com. And my TED Talk, you can Google my name and mental health and find my TED Talk about mental health in the workplace.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. And my last question is, if you could give business owners, who specifically are fathers and husbands, one gift today around this topic, or really instill them with one gift today or one change, what would you give them?
I would say watch the M Factor documentary and know that I am helping you protect the most important relationships in your life.
And if every business owner had watched this film, what do you see, or understand this topic on a deeper level? What do you see possible in the workplace that is not possible yet today?
Well, the statistics tell us that more than 65% of women between 45 and 55, which is the peaks of their often career and wisdom, and you're at that most valuable stage as you get into your 50s work wise, that almost 65%, maybe higher depending on the research you look at, either do change jobs or consider changing jobs because of what they deal with their symptoms of menopause. So this is a talent loss topic for businesses and companies. And so the more you learn, you will find ways to unlock and create value inside your company, while also really driving your culture. And you become a place people want to work, and you become a place people don't want to leave and don't need to leave as they go through whatever challenges they're going through. So I know that I'm giving you and your listeners, there's a little nugget of value right here. And if you plant it in your company, it will grow into value.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you to everyone who listened. Don't forget to follow at Dan Simon Says, foundingfarmers.com. Check out his TED Talk. And thank you, Dan, for helping the change needed in the workplace, culture, and world today. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Ben.
My pleasure.